Welcome to the ERP Seal podcast. My name is Tim Rodman. We are live today on Friday, August 14th, 2026, and this is episode number 183. You can see related links on the episode page down at the bottom of the screen at erpseal.com/episode 183. And today we got Ralph Torres to talk about ERP deployment with 15 different operational companies, not financial companies, but operational companies. So Ralph, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
So I always like to start off with a brief origin story for each of our guests, where you
Okay.
grew up, where you went to school, and how you landed in the world of mid-market ERP.
Which is probably the weirdest part for me with my background. So I grew up and was born and raised in Southern California, suburbs of LA. I live there now too, still, and that's where our headquarters of Eastman is in Pomona, California. I went to school for music performance degree. I went to Cal State Northridge and Cal State San Bernardino. So zero background in IT, business, finance, any of that stuff. But as it came to, trying to get out there in the world as a performing musician and being able to pay a mortgage and all that stuff, which there was no part of me that was, not aware of the harsh reality that I was setting myself up for, of trying to make it as a performing jazz musician. Decided to get a day gig type situation, right? And originally I had thought, oh, I'll get my degree and I'll start substitute teaching. Maybe I'll go into teaching music. And then I was just looking for different jobs, and Eastman Strings, a company I hadn't heard of because they weren't really in the wind instrument space of things yet at the time, was hiring for a customer service person. So my thing was, all right, I'll see if there's anything close enough to home that's music adjacent at least. I interviewed and I got the job, and then 18 plus years later, I'm vice president of operations now. And
So a music adjacent day gig is how you landed in mid-market ERP. And actually, as much as you sound like you think it's a unusual path, I think it's very typical in the sense that there is no usual path into mid-market ERP.
Right. It's just arts to ERP is a little much different than, like, oh, I was a finance major, which I think is the normal path for people, if there's a normal path.
I'm not so sure. Actually, one of the best ERP consultants I know was also, what was he? He was some kind of art major. And that's why I say, I don't think there is a normal path. There's something different with ERP systems compared to just finance and compared to like computer programming. Like there's something different about the organizational thinking and the ability to get people together and do stuff that, I think that art piece is actually good. I don't know if do you agree with that? Like, do you feel like it's been good training?
100% know that's why, obviously my wife's a school teacher, I still play, she's a music teacher. There's definitely, I am a huge proponent for music education because of the whole connecting the left side, right brain. It's a human activity that develops you in ways that other human activities don't. All arts do, but music has its own unique thing. And I definitely think the analytical side of being comfortable with numbers and math and concepts of scales, a lot of musicians think they're not math people, but they really are, because it's very mathematical behind the scenes when you start studying it. But then there's also the analytical side, but then there's also the creative side, right? So being able to merge those two really is, to me, what has made me successful, and the way that we have been successful in implementing our ERP system, because you actually can be very creative when it comes to not just using the tool and teaching people how to use the tool, but actually how to get the most out of the tool and connecting things that normally aren't connected in a basic business structure of like finance, sales, operations, like silo thinking.
Love that. I think that is so true. That's really cool. And I think you even have, if I remember, I've been to your office, and do you still have those saxophone necks on your desk there?
Yes, I do. They're on the other side of my screen, so I get showed. Yeah. I mean, if you saw the rest, I still have R&D instruments, and they're still definitely part of developing music. As part of my path up to my position, I've been a product manager. I've helped initially develop our saxophone line, and continue to poke my head in and give my opinion as the current saxophone development team's working on things and stuff. So I'm still very much focused on the product that we sell too.
That's really cool. And you got your MVP awards there in the background. Your MVP.
Yeah. And my
Eastman
water
Springs.
bottle, and our Eastman Music Company Customer of the Year from last year. So
yeah, wait. So I was trying to remember. Was that 2025 at the 2025 summit?
It was, yeah.
Nice.
The Las Vegas one.
The Las Vegas one. Awesome, awesome. And I think so. You've also been on the official Acumatica podcast. I'll put a link in the episode page, erpseal.com/episode 183. I think you talked about a lot of the story there. I always like to go into like geekier detail on these episodes. So I think what I'm going to do on this is sort of save the overview part for just if people want to listen to that podcast episode, and we could, kind of focus on drilling down into more of the geeky details. So first, when we say 15 operational companies, tell us what that means and how that's different than just 15 financial companies.
Well, it's 15 companies that sell or make product, sell and or make a product. So we have 5 factories in China that are on 4 locations. One of the factories has 2 separate things. We have a factory that makes and sells clarinets in Vancouver, Canada. We have 4 manufacturing and facilities that make and sell their product on the East Coast. We have 3 distribution companies. I'm working at the Eastman Pomona. That's my home base. And then we also have a distribution company in Netherlands. We have a distribution company in Australia. We have a flute store, retail store in Australia. And we also have 2 manufacturing facilities in Europe, one in Switzerland and one in France. So that's the 15 different business entities in Acumatica that we have that make and or buy sell product. And the very biggest complication for us is we make and sell product to ourselves to then sell as the distributor for ourselves. So that's where a lot of the complication comes into how to actually report what we're selling to the world, not just to ourselves.
You don't want to be like what's going on in AI these days, where the companies are just changing money and turning huge valuations out of shape.
Yeah, we could easily run it. I mean, so the manufacturing companies could be like, "Oh man, we've had an amazing year." Well, yeah, but I have a lot of inventory now, so you didn't, because we still need to sell it. So being able to report that has been. We're able to do it. I don't know if it's because of Acumatica, but it has the tools that allows us to do it for sure.
Awesome. And do all 15 carry inventory? So not just selling, but do they at least at some point in time they're carrying inventory before they sell it?
Oh yeah.
So you got the inventory module on for all 15.
All.
And I didn't realize it's not just that they're all operational, because saying 15 financial companies is a totally different story. Like I know Sage Intacct is a really good ERP product at the financial side. Like they're really good at talking to accountants. What I've heard that they start to struggle is when you get to the inventory side. I'm curious your thoughts on that. Did you look at that solution when you were moving off of whatever?
Sage Intacct wasn't an option for us, according to our then Sage 100. I don't think they called them VAR, whatever that is, our reseller, our support for Sage. They're like, yeah, that's not an option. Sage X3 or 3X, I forgot exactly what it is. That was
X3. That would make sense
because of the I mean, we weren't able to really manage our manufacturing in Sage, and that was aside from the fact that just being old and antiquated, that was one of the big major needs that we had, was to be able to manage pretty complex manufacturing bombs. Like when making a trombone, that's not an easy task as far as managing all the sub-assemblies and screws and processes to bend a piece of metal into a bell and represent that somehow in data in an ERP system. It's not light manufacturing by any means. So we had to have a tool that could handle the complexity of manufacturing for sure, and streamline the financial reporting.
That makes sense. Yeah, and I'm not picking on Intacct. I just like to help kind of highlight the differences between different ERP products, at least as I understand it. It's a good product for financials. Yeah.
Or service companies, maybe. I'm not 100% sure on that. Mm-hmm. I know Acumatica's add the service field to theirs, so hopefully that's working well. But our Sage support, what they used Intact. They said it's fantastic, but it does not for inventory.
Yep. Yeah, I think services also, they're doing well in construction because Sage owns the old Timberline product, which was very popular in construction. And so a lot of construction companies use Intact. And what I've understood from partners who represent both products is that where they start to reach for Acumatica is when it's a construction company that does carry inventory. If it's a construction company that's just dealing with project accounting, regular accounting, then Intact does really well. It's that inventory piece. And so I guess I'm just trying to highlight the differences between being a financial operation where it's just about dollars versus an operational operation where it's about quantities and products and things like that. And
that said, in Acumatica, we do have more than the 15 companies set up because there are some type of, holding company type situations where we do have, some type of financial entity that owns a group of, rich people problems. I call it. I don't, I let my CFO deal with that stuff. You just tell me what you need set up. So we do have some companies that are just purely for the financial transactions. Yeah.
Yep. That's very common. Very common. And then I didn't remember that it was not only 15, that are carrying inventory, but that you've got international stuff going on as well. That's interesting.
Yeah, very much so. And
so
and, maybe and not every company is like 100% inventorying screws, right? Like our Chinese factories aren't really there. A lot of that's more for the financial transactions of them being able to sell to us and invoice it. But they have their own systems, and we're talking to them. Do we want to move 100% to Acumatica, or are you gonna keep your bombs outside of Acumatica? We'll just add inventory as you're ready to sell it. There's a lot of different flexibility that we can do versus all the way to companies that are literally, stocking screws to make the instruments.
Actually, talk to me about China specifically, because I worked for a manufacturing company, oh boy, over 10 years ago at this point. And yeah, I remember a few things about China. One of them was that, if I remember correctly, like they were officially sanctioned ERP products that the government wanted you to use. Do you know if that's still the case that you run into?
I don't know. And I think that's harder for them to manage because of the cloud structure and our ability to use it. So they're able to use it.
But I guess it's specifically like when you get into the bombs and things, when you get into the deep operational side, that a lot of times still they'll just run a local Chinese product and kind of roll up the financial data into
the accounting rules are different in China. I don't really that's definitely where I leave our controller and our CFO to manage and make sure that we're good. And we have an accounting team that uses Acumatica for things, but there's a lot of, even as far as recording, how you record your currency and how that backs up your currency conversions. You have to have that stored, and it has to be backed up in a way, and you have to have that use the government's official currency convert. It's very regulated.
Stuff I was thinking about. Yeah, that's the stuff I was thinking about.
It's very regulated. So that was a definitely learning curve experience for me when I was over there trying to get them set up. And it's like, oh yeah, and it's a different ballgame in that respect. But we have a good accounting team there, and they're able to learn how to use Acumatica and where the gaps are and how to fill them in.
So you're kind of doing a hybrid approach in that they're running on some version of their local ERP, but then it's
no
set up API connections, or
no. They're not running on a local ERP. A lot of it's figuring out how to manage that information literally on spreadsheets and other resources that they have. They're not running a separate ERP.
So do you find that there's some duplication and overlap where they kind of have to do it outside of Acumatica for some things, but then
no, because a lot of that we were able to get customized in Acumatica, like a big issue. And so our Chinese companies work in their own tenant because there's some configuration and very specific things we need to deal with for them. Their shipping documents are way different than what we need in the US. Like an invoice usually is enough for a shipping document. They have a lot of rules and regulations on how the packing list has to look. And there's something called Shotsa, which allows them, a Chinese manufacturer, to import and product non-tariffed, but it has to be exported back out within a time frame, and they need a permit. There's a lot of stuff they have to manage and deal with because of the just the way the Chinese government has their tax structure set up to incentivize companies to manufacture and do things. And there's a lot of reporting needs that they had that obviously Acumatica didn't, right? But we were able to work with a partner actually based in Taiwan in conjunction with our VAR. They hooked us up with them. They're actually the company that does the Chinese language pack. So, the Chinese tenant does have a Chinese language pack. So the Chinese, they're reading Acumatica in Mandarin. So they were able to customize a lot of shipment documents for us, like a lot. So it was really helpful to be able to export the many different versions of government requirements for a packing list for a SHOTSA, the regular invoice, and all these reporting things from the shipment the shipment screen. They're able to export this information, and it's also allowed us to provide documents for our the company that does all of our import filings with CBP to have the HS codes and to summarize things. So it's helped us a lot on both ends because we're using the same data. Like the factory's factory's student alto saxophone is our student alto saxophone, and all of the attributes that we have behind the scenes to have like the proper HS code, the import code that we use, and the weights and measurements. If there's other things, there's a lot of regulations on bringing wood into the US. So we use attributes extensively to define the characteristics of our problem. And then we could just summarize the information, and it makes us a lot easier for export and import paperwork regulations between all the different countries, depending on what they require.
Love that. So, and when you say attributes, you mean attributes on the stock item?
Yep. We have a lot of attributes on the stock item, and we manage that stuff, and then we are able to either use Acumatica natively through GIs or reports, or dump the data into Velixo, and then we can report against all of that data.
Awesome. So it sounds like a lot of your shipping documents you were able to just handle with Report Designer. So not only are they looking at Mandarin in the application, but the reports are Mandarin as well that are printing out of Report Designer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So then where's Excel still get involved? Maybe more on the accounting side of things?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Yep.
And
or even sometimes, handing off information between ourselves.
That makes sense. But the operational side.
Oh yeah, no, the factory. Our factory sends us
awesome.
an invoice. It's easy enough for us to just go to the shipment, Excel it out, and then that turns into our PO on our side. There's a lot of ways where we can use the export import function, and since we're using the same exact item codes in the system, because I'm very strict on the fact that we need the item, the stock inventory IDs have to be the same. Then it's really easy for us to just use Acumatica to download information and upload it in the other company or the other, because they're in a different tenant.
Interesting. Yeah, a separate tenant, for those who don't know, is basically like a separate Acumatica application. So you're using Excel sort of as the middleware to bring data between companies, which makes total sense to me, because you need the arm's length because they are separate companies, but because you have access to both login wise, you can just, I like your phrase, Excel it out and then Excel it in.
And it gets to the point to where if we're doing that process over and over, all right, well, let's create a GI and then run an import scenario through Velixo's write back function. And then it's just a few button clicks rather than even manipulating the data to come in and out. It's just drop it down, move it over, and put it back in.
Yeah, and so when you say Excel, you also have Velixo, which is an Excel add-in. Do you know if they're using, at least the accountants, using the Velixo product over in China?
Yes.
Awesome. So you got Mandarin going on in the Acumatica application, in the shipping documents that it's printing, and in Velixo, because it's got to be like a Mandarin version of Microsoft Excel.
Yeah, they're able to. Yeah, they just type on it. Well, the workers that use it are all under our same Microsoft environment, so they have they have a license and they could use it.
That's really cool. You mentioned HS or HTS. I can't remember which one it is.
HS, but then the US calls just HTS US, the Harmonized Tax System, United States.
And that has to do with, for a specific stock item, that's like the tariff code is this really long number, right? That determines what rules apply.
It's the global number, which is the HS, the harmonized system. It's 6 digits. And those 6 digits define the shared grouping of what a product is. Then each company can get more specific. Each country can get more specific if they want to. So the US's version is called HTS US, Harmonized Tax System United States. That's 10 digits long. So it's 4 digits, dot 2 digits, dot 2 digits, dot 2 digits. So in the US, depending on, in my world, I know that an electric guitar worth more than $2,000 is a different HS code and a different base tariff rate than a electric guitar under $2,000. My assumption being because there are companies in the US that make electric guitars, so there's a premium to import that product, at least at the base tariff level. Forget about extra tariffs, but at the base tariff level, that level's higher, because it costs more to import a high-end guitar than a low-end guitar. So
I'll put a link to a previous episode that I did on tariffs. Peter Nicholson jumped on from the UK and kind of walked me through the big PDF document. I'm curious, like, do you have some service that you subscribe to get all the rates for these codes, or do you go through that big PDF document that the government produces? Because they're changing so frequently. That's why I wonder.
You can't. That's why it doesn't. Yeah, at this point, you can't rely on it. But no, we have the HS codes as attributes, and I have the code for the US. I have an attribute for Netherlands. I have an attribute for the companies that need it, and we assign it to the various item classes that those companies would sell, and then we're able to report that. We have a broker that does all the actual, you don't say, okay, CBP, here's $100,000 to import this. You say, I'm importing this HS code, these items worth this much. I'm importing this HS code, these items worth this much. And then in the filing, they say, all right, here's all the tariffs that you have to pay. Now pay your bill and you can import it.
Got it. That makes sense. So it's not software as a service, it's service as a service. You got a broker handling all that. Okay, that makes sense. You said CBP. What was that?
Customs, Border and Protection. That's who manages that's the government entity in the US that you pay your tariffs to.
Gotcha. Did you end up putting together some level of analysis on that just to get an idea of how tariffs are impacting the business the past year and a half or so?
Well, one thing that we did is, so we buy from ourselves by and large, and most of our product that we don't buy, like supplies, it's pretty specialty stuff, right? Like we're buying flute tubes made out of gold. So, for as an example, or, so we don't care about landed costs traditionally, because I don't need to like grade a vendor. Oh, that vendor's cheaper when I look at how much to ship from, it's cheaper if I buy it it's more expensive in the California, but cheaper in Maine, but it's less freight. I don't need to worry about that stuff because I can't, right? Like we're buying from ourselves no matter what. And when we're buying raw materials to make a lot of our instruments, we're buying tone woods from the company that makes good tone woods. We can't buy from another vendor. So because of that, we traditionally never thought landed cost wasn't a real concern, right? Like obviously we care about freight and keeping our costs down, but I didn't have options to get different vendors. However, once tariffs went from being, like a 10, 12, 15% concern with the base tariff plus the Section 301 tariffs from 2018-19, all of a sudden we get 20% tariff, 30% tariff, 125% tariff. We get all these stacked tariffs. Now the landed cost, that tariff rate wasn't something I could just our CFO kind of just bucketed as, it's basically an operating expense each month. It really is cost of goods, but he could bucket it in a way that it wasn't, crazy. Well, now when you have the value of a product going from 10, 15% of its value, technically what you paid for to get it here, including tariff, now you're talking about 30, 40%, 45% of the value of a product when you bring it in as tariffs. So we started using landed costs for that purpose. So we we get the entry summary from CBP, from the government, saying here's what you bought, here's your total tariff bill for this shipment. Then we add those. Then we use a Velixo write back function where we pull our PO down, we assign the value of percents that we have on that sheet, and then we push it in through a landed cost transaction. And now we have a saxophone that may have cost us, I'm making up numbers, $500 to buy from ourselves. Well, in the past, it would have been, $550. Well, now it's $800 because it's got a 30 something or whatever. Yeah. Am I doing that right? No, not $800. Like $650. It's got a 30% tariff on it. Now we're able to use the attributes in the system in conjunction with Velixo and the outside report to then just create a write back. And now we have a landed cost calculation, and we could assign that value to the carrying inventory.
I'm curious on that specifically. What made you go through the headache of implementing landed costs instead of just analyzing the raw tariff percentage data? Or maybe you didn't have it because the broker.
No, it's very different for products. Our case, like even right now, where the tariffs are at today, we're talking about a 20% for some items all the way up to like 50%. So the reason we did that is because when we're looking at our sales prices for next year, we're looking at running specials for inventory. When you have such a bigger percent being a tariff rate rather than a smaller rate, I want my product managers to be able to see that. So it's more for like future understanding that if you're going to raise prices or you're going to run a special, what used to look like, oh, we've got 40% margin on that, we can go 20% off. Well, no, you don't actually have 40% when now the tariff pushed that so much higher. So now our assumed margins very much change. If we're just looking at a purchase price, it really does cost a lot more.
So sales and pricing analysis. And when you do that type of analysis, you find you're doing it mostly in Velixo?
No, I use I created a GI that shows us what the last landed cost was, what the last tariff rate was, so they can see it. I just use the data in the landed cost to create a GI so the sales staff, because like the landed cost may or may not include tariff rate because we may or may not have bought it since tariffs went up last time, right? So the landed cost isn't even correct anymore. Even if we look at last cost, it's not even correct anymore necessarily because the tariff rate may have changed. So we're looking at the last landed cost transaction and calculating what that, thinking if things stay the same, this is the value that we're going to figure out as far as sales and marketing pricing for next year.
And that's the part I was wondering why you didn't just go to the raw tariff percentage data. But then I think I realized the reason is you don't have that data, at least not cleanly, because the broker is the one who handles that. So you sort of have this time delayed data, but that's better than nothing. So that's the data you have to. It's the landed cost is the time delayed version of it.
It's very hard to manage the tariffs because we got to pay the bill today, even if we raise our prices. And I don't want this to turn into a tariff debate, but it's part of the thinking of how we're going to manage this stuff, because we might have dead stock that wasn't tariffed. So when we're blowing out a blowout sale, it's not, we can go lower. If we have dead stock that we're trying to get rid of, we can go lower than if we were calculating an assumed tariff rate. So it really started to matter. Like,
so okay, interesting.
What does our inventory really valued at?
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, it's all timing, isn't it? That's why a lot of companies were buying up tons of inventory, or at least moving it between, in your case, moving it between countries to get it into a selling location before a tariff hits. That's so fascinating. Is there a function that you do on the operational side where someone's at least sort of keeping their finger on the pulse of where they think things are going, so they decide if they want to make a big bulk move between countries?
Yeah, it's me. I have our brokers. Our brokers are pretty good at keeping. Oh, but there was just an announcement, right? Like if there's an X tweet or whatever it is, and it's like, all right, now do we have to worry about this one or not? Right? You never know. So usually I know for a while before I start worrying about it or not worrying about it, right? And then it's a little bit of gut feeling, like based off of what's happened for the last year. Do I think this one's going to stick or not stick? Do we need to freak out or do we not need to freak out? You know, do we need to have the factory send us everything right now or not? I don't, you know, it sucks, but we just, you know, could only deal with what you know is true.
That's so interesting. Well, that's cool. All right. So inventory, and not just inventory, but international inventory. What other challenges? Talk about the implementation itself and what other just challenges. You got multiple countries, multiple languages. We already talked about the Mandarin side of things. What were some of the other high level challenges you had to work through with so many 15 operational companies?
Well, it's really just a lot of the outward facing documents. So, for example, you know, in the US as a B2B wholesaler from Pomona selling to music stores, I don't have to worry about taxes because it's tax free, right? So in the US, you don't pay taxes until you sell it to the end user. You know, so I don't charge taxes to a music store and then they sell it to someone and they charge taxes. That's not the case in most of the world. Most of the world has something either GST or VAT, general sales tax or VAT, and various versions of it. Canada's pretty complicated because in Canada there's the national general tax and then there's the provincial tax, and it's a combination of both, or it's just a general tax that you pay that kind of each province has its own rules and regulations on it. But then in somewhere like Australia, it's a 10% general sales tax, period. Every transaction, GST is 10%. So because of the different ways they manage taxing, I had to create different invoices. So our China companies are in one tenant, our US based companies are in one tenant, and the rest of our international group are in their own tenant. So that was like struggle to figure out, okay, well, Eastman Europe and Netherlands needs their invoices. Eastman Australia needs their invoices because in the Netherlands, they just want to see VAT on the bottom. In Australia, they want to see the 10% inclusive of the line item price. So it's not a struggle. It's just something you got to work through it and figure out the functions within the system, how to do that. And we've used we have it all set up where I have an Australia invoice, I have a Europe invoice, I have a Canada invoice. I have different invoice forms because also banking, right? Like we want to put our payment information on our invoices. Well, obviously it's not the same for the company Bakun in Canada versus Eastman Europe and Australia. So we were able to just have, between report designer, and I even have, if people are paying in different currencies, that's what I see a lot of, like the big difference between like the US mindset. We don't have to worry about any of this stuff because selling the interstate, it doesn't matter. None of this matters until you're a retail store. You just charge the tax rate for where you sell out of, right? But there's so little. In Europe, they're selling to most of their sales are not to to Dutch companies. In Netherlands, most of their sales are outside. So they really care about country of origin on the invoice, HS code on the invoice, the way the VAT's met. There's other concerns that the rest of the world has that are way more natural to them than what we have in the US. Phil, in a little way, starting out of this, I felt kind of sheltered because US actually makes it pretty easy to do business with ourselves. There's a lot of different regulations that you throw into once you start going international and needs. So, for Australia, they want to have something. If something's $1,000, they want it to be $1,000, but that's $1,000 with GST in it. So our pricing has to be backed into that because they're in the US, our retail friendly pricing is pre-tax. In the rest of the world, the retail friendly pricing is post-tax. So there's just those are the types of complications and nuances that I had to kind of work through as doing these things. And, we have good employees there. And I said, okay, show me an invoice. What do you guys want? And we could work through it. Then that's where I worked with our VAR, ISS. All right, I need this. How do I make this happen? And they show me, and we work through it and talk through it, and we'd come up with a solution. Integrated System Solutions is the company name. They're local to where I am here. So they create us a business event. Whenever there's a new customer that's created for that branch, that company in, if it's created for Eastman Australia, they automatically get their invoice updated, so that customer gets the Australia version of the invoice versus the other customers. You know, a customer for Wilson in Switzerland, they get the Switzerland invoice. So that's a complication to have to deal with if you're going to go international, is that expectation that the customers and even your vendors get, as far as how the POs look and how the invoices look. The data in and out is where things change. As far as doing stuff in Acumatica, very similar.
So I hear kind of two things. One is the not so much a strategic struggle, but the death by 1,000 digital paper cut struggle, which is all the forms in the different countries and all those details you had to work through. But was there also a strategic struggle when it came down to how many tenants are we going to have? It sounded like you wound up doing one for the US, one for China, one for everyone else. Was that a struggle to work through?
No, and to be honest, I don't know. For us, it was a very specific reason why we had to do it that way, and I'll say it. I don't know if that would be the case in today's version of Acumatica. When we did it, multi-base currency was very new as a capability in Acumatica, and it did not include the ability. They weren't guaranteeing manufacturing and how that could possibly get affected with multi-base currency. So the US is one, we're all in USD, so we're just going to stay there. The international companies, we started adding them on, and they could do multi-base currency. And by the time any of those companies were manufacturing, they were over that hump. I'm still okay with it, and I probably would keep it that way if I could think in hindsight, but going into it, I probably would have put everyone in the same tenant, except for China, again, because they have very customized documents that I didn't necessarily want to have everyone see. And what's that button? Why is that button there? They have very customized documents because of the export paperwork needs. And also the multi-language setup. I didn't want to deal with that with everyone else.
Interesting. Okay. I'm going to look into that. I'll put it on the episode page, erpseal.com/episode 183. So yeah, I'll look for it somewhere in the release notes. I think the base currencies are supported in manufacturing now. When that was, I'll look that up. I don't know if you know off the top of your head, but
it's 2 or 3 years ago, because we moved. Yeah, we moved. We started in 2022, and I think it was probably 2023 that multi-base currency was a capability, and then I think it was maybe 2024. But yeah, look it up. That was our deciding factor. In the end, I'm fine with it now at this point, because I don't have to worry about assigning US-based customers the right invoice, because everyone's just getting the same invoice. I just have, expression fields in the report designer that change the bank account depending on who the selling branch is. So I'm happy with that, because I don't have to deal with that in the US tenant, and we only have to deal with that in the international tenant.
Sounds like a lot of detail to work through. 15 operational companies, multiple countries. Between the time that you signed up with Acumatica and like, yes, this is what we're doing, and the time that you went live, how long was that? And did you do a big bang go live across all 15 companies, or did you roll it in? Talk to us about that process.
Well, just more generally, we didn't even have 15 companies at that time. We've added a few since the go live. So 2022, I want to say around March, we made the decision that Acumatica was the winner over Microsoft's version, Dynamics. I forget what version, what it was called.
Probably Business Central.
Business. I think maybe that's
probably. Okay.
So we decided to go with Acumatica. The reason we did the decision, I've said this before at other times, it's just Microsoft is an awesome company. We are a Microsoft company. We use Outlook. We use spreadsheets and all, Excel and all that other stuff. But it's a giant company, and how much of the ERP system is their main concern, or resources are put into their ERP system. It's versus Acumatica, where it's a singular focus of the entire company. The CEO's livelihood depends on Acumatica running well. I don't think the Dynamics or whatever it was, Business Central, it really matters to the CEO. I mean, it does. It's a revenue stream.
Interesting. Right? So it wasn't so much a product functionality thing. It was a company relationship thing.
That was a kind of a little bit more of a gut feeling situation, but also just the pricing structure. I mean, usage-based pricing structure at Acumatica just made our life so much easier, especially since we knew we were going to scale up to many different countries. And I didn't want to have the user count of something in the back of my head of like, oh, should we really do this? Should we really do this? Because since we're just usage-based, well, yeah, we'll pay more for using it more because we're getting value out of it.
Interesting. So that was a big selling point for you. I'm curious if you've ever gone back in the somewhat recent past and done some analysis on what's our true per user cost and compared that to Dynamics Business Central.
I haven't, no.
It's easy to do, right? Like all you do is take your total annual bill and divide it by number of users. I'd be really curious to know what that turns out for you. Because like it's attractive from the standpoint of, like you said, I don't want it in the back of my mind to sort of, I don't know, impact me not bringing someone onto the system, even if it's just for reporting purposes. That's when it's a big win. So that makes sense. But then I always wonder how it actually plays out. You know, if it's basically on par. You'd be a great one to know the data on that for.
Yeah, at the top of my head, I think it's probably we're still winning out based off of numbers I was told back then.
Yeah, interesting. To me, what I would be curious on is if you take your last annual Acumatica bill and then you go look at the access history log and you look at how many users have logged in the last 30 days, that would be the count. And just take the bill, divide it by that. And I'd be curious, and divide it by 12, because I think the Business Central number is like a monthly number.
Monthly, as a monthly number,
something like that. I'd be curious on that. Yeah, if you can, no pressure, but if you can, I'll drop that in the related links. You know, that follow up, what that analysis ends up being.
Off the top of my head, quick math in my head, I think we're still very much fine with the decision that was made. There was also some other functional things, the reporting tools and things like that. Now, I think for me, if I was thinking about something differently, you know, maybe AI maybe 1 year from now, maybe 2 years from now, that would have been part of the actual, okay, which one are we going to do, right? Because everyone's still figuring out how to use AI in everyday life, let alone the ERP system, and to actually get real value out of it. Like you already said, the AI.
I'm tracking calories these days on my phone with AI. Yeah, it's all over the place.
So I'm not sure if today's version of AI would be a deciding factor for me, but it is interesting because Dynamics is directly connected to Copilot, and we're using Copilot extensively. But that being said, it's not hard for me. It's not a very big barrier for me to go from Acumatica data to Velixo to Copilot, which we've done extensively already. So
talk to me about that.
I don't know.
A good segue to AI. You're a tinkering person, very good at working through details on stuff. Yeah. What are some of the fun / meaningful AI projects that you've got going on there?
So a lot of one is getting to analyses that we don't normally get to. So, it's a double-edged sword. Well, it's not really a bad thing on both sides. I don't know what the right term is, but it's a blessing and a curse that we own ourselves, because we buy product from our factory in China and then we sell it in the US. Do we have to pay our factory in China in a certain amount of time? No, the CFO gets to choose what that is, right? Like the terms are almost meaningless. They're not from a financial reporting standpoint because your past due AR means something. But, at the end of the day, we get to decide when we pay ourselves for something. It's a perk that we get. And we get to decide how much margin we make. We still have to keep everything arm's reach and make it look, make sure every company's healthy and, we're not doing anything funky with stuff like that.
You have a lot more flexibility.
So much more
flexibility. Which is a blessing and a curse. I can see that because you have to think about it. The curse of it is
our AR and AP reconciling the massive amount of sales that we have to ourselves versus the POs that we have to ourselves. And if there was an accounting mistake on either end and things like that, that's really hard. Well, not now, because we have a Velixo report that just dumps out open AR with the field that should match the field on the open AP. And then rather than having a person have to do either X, looks up, whatever they have to do, you just dump that into a Copilot and say, analyze and tell me where the mistakes are. that's square one. And then you see what it says and you're like, okay, so now our CFO has a fantastic way that the accounting team, 15 companies, right? How many different reconciliation groups do we have between? I don't remember what the number is. It's in the approaching 100 maybe. If there's no way they're going to get a time, because we have one, for the most part, we have one accounting team that based out of Pomona that manages the world. China does do themselves to a certain extent, but as far as the interconnected, who owes what to whom, do froms, all that stuff, they're managing that here, and they could just dump all that information into AI. Half an hour later, they have a report with the what's red, what's green, what's yellow, based off of building the prompt over time. So that's like a big win. That's a really great way for us to just get information and make sure things are flowing and catch problems before they become actual problems.
I love that. And I love how you said, I can't remember the exact phrase you used, but it was basically something that you just didn't have time to do at all. And so does AI need to be perfect at it? No, because we never could do it at all. Instead of just licking our finger and seeing which way the wind is blowing or guessing, you at least have a lot more, I don't know, foundation to make a decision off of than nothing, right?
No, for sure. And I mean, I just in general, my operational thinking very much uses the 80-20 Pareto rule, right? Like 80% of your problems is 20% of your volume, or however different ways people say that. But essentially, it gives us the ability to filter out the fluff that takes time to get to, so that you actually get to the meat of what matters. Another instance is analyze. We're same type of concept of what our CFO is doing. We're looking at that on the manufacturing side, where maybe AI can create a better production schedule for product producing than we're doing for ourselves, based off of the fact that we're buying from ourselves, right? So if we tell AI, well, we're buying from ourselves, but we have other customers buying from us, but we have production limitations, how should we do this? It gives actually really good answers. Depending on how far down that path, we even played around with a particular production to where what would you suggest as our daily schedule for the next 2 months? Just do it. And it did it. And it was like, that's actually pretty good. I'm going to change it. I'm going to update it. I'm going to fix it. That was a bad decision. But then again, you could teach it to say, why did you decide that? Because of this. Okay, don't do that again. And then we could update our prompts and stuff. So that's where I think the value could come into a company using, an ERP system that lets you easily download information to Excel. It's very easy to move that over to Copilot. We have I'll go into a little bit more about our AI strategy. We have chosen specifically to stick within Copilot, because we've worked with our IT support company to kind of secure it in a way so that we don't end up someone downloading our company financials and all of a sudden Claude's using that as its source of, whatever. That's our fear. Yep. Data integrity, data security. Yeah. So, if we keep things within the Microsoft environment and we have the security turned up pretty high, if someone emails out something that's funky, then alerts happen and we can take care of that issue. It stays within Copilot. So that's why we've chosen to do that. So between Velixo, Acumatica's GIs, and Copilot, we're doing some really cool things that, like you said, that you liked me saying already. Conceptually, when we have time, we could do this, and we never do it. Well, just have Copilot do it. Even if you don't use Copilot to do it, it can teach you a way to do it that you may not have thought of, and then you could do it yourself. I've seen that happen. I can't remember a specific example, but sometimes it leads me down a path I wouldn't have done myself, or it just gets me there faster.
Since you've been in these details, I'm curious, you can fact check my take on things. My understanding is Microsoft's Copilot kind of had not a great initial launch. Like, it just was nowhere near ChatGPT and Claude. But since then, my understanding is Microsoft is licensing the same Anthropic and OpenAI models on the back end. Mm-hmm. And so in theory, it should be just as good. I don't know if there's a time lag, like when OpenAI releases a new model, how long does it take to get into Copilot? Do you know anything about those details?
I don't know specifically, but yeah, depending on which agent you're using, different options show up, and you could even I think natively, without you doing anything, it'll choose which LLM it's using, but you could also, you can choose it for yourself, and it'll decide whether or not it should use Claude or ChatGPT, depending on what you're asking it to do.
Right. Yeah, that is so interesting. I really think that Microsoft is in a really good position on that, because even you've got these local LLMs now that are becoming quite capable, especially in
Yeah.
boring back office ERP work that doesn't need a ton of intelligence. And yeah, Microsoft just sort of sitting at the distribution point where they just sort of route your query to wherever they think it makes the most sense, and they're licensing all of them on the back end. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool.
And outside of ERP system and just managing the business for it when we're because and I'm not trying to sell Copilot. Use whatever you want to use. However, it has access to my OneDrive. It has access to Teams. It has access to Outlook. So in some ways, we can ask it, pretty detailed questions and get, hey, where's this project at? Where was the last update about this saxophone development? And it'll look and go to meetings and pull out the information for you and actually do a pretty good job on that. So just as a general use for just getting to the data faster, getting to the information faster, where in the past where did I save that folder? Where did I save that file? And if you have a thought in your head to go look something up, just tell Copilot to do it and it'll do it.
I know you came to the Power BI workshop that I've done, and also I owe you access to the map, which I'll get to. But that makes me wonder, when you're starting to talk about the tooling, because to me, that's Microsoft's in the lead on building out the tooling. They're not an LLM, which is why they were getting hammered in the beginning. But now people have realized, who cares? Just license the LLM. They've done that. So when it comes to the tooling, they're building out some interesting search functionality, because it's all about finding the relevant information, which is not really an LLM task, because the LLM only can hold 1 million tokens or whatever in its brain. Even if it gets to 2 million, you need search tooling. So Microsoft's doing that. But a lot of that I've seen, what they're building it in is Fabric. I'm curious if you've gotten into Fabric at all.
So we are starting to for a forecasting tool that we're building. So one thing that's very hard to manage 15 companies that buy and sell from ourselves is, what is our goal for that brand internationally, whether or not it's manufactured product that they make or it's a product that our factory in China makes for them, but then drop ships it to one of our distribution companies, but then sells it to them so that they get their piece of the cut. But then this company then sells it as a drop ship to us. Things that are pretty easy in, like, if you weren't related, right? Because those transactions happen, right? Like if you're not distributing for yourself. But when they do happen for yourself, the finances can get really haywire. So like a specific, you like to get into details, so I can give you a detail one. So like
geek out, man, geek out.
We in Pomona distribute student trumpets for for Shires, which is a premium custom trombone factory in Boston, Massachusetts, outside of Boston, Massachusetts. So they make expensive, high-end custom trombones that people in the New York Phil play. Our factories in China have been taught by them how to make instruments better than they were on their own before we acquired Shires. That's been a while ago. But they then make a student trumpet. And then that student trumpet comes here to Pomona. And then we sell it. So how do we make sure everyone makes the money they need to make? And then how do we report how much? So if it's much more complicated than this, I'm not forecasting one trumpet, but to simplify things, if I was forecasting one trumpet and I think I'm going to sell $1 million worth of those student trumpets next year, how does that back into a sale from Shires to Eastman? And how does that back into a sale from our factory in China to Shires? So it's a chain of sales that need to happen. So that's really hard for us to figure out the forecasting on, because I might have $500,000 worth of inventory here in Pomona. So I only need to buy half of, and I'm doing bad math because I'm not talking about, the actual cost to sell $1 million. But if I have
making up numbers,
if I have half the inventory I have here in Pomona to do next year's sales, then I only need half of that from that. So it gets really complicated to try and factor in, what do I think China's going to make for our forecasted sales of that trumpet out of Pomona, let alone Europe and Australia, who are also going to distribute that product for Shires. So when we look at Shires as its own company, we need to know what is their forecast for distributed product and what is their forecast for manufactured product, the stuff they make versus the stuff they're having essentially a contract manufacturer make for them and then selling to distributors. So that's a whole thing to figure out. Well, if all of a sudden something happens in Europe and they're going to they think they're going to sell a bunch more trumpets next year, then that needs to back into Shires' sales goal, because now their goal needs to go up, because now all of a sudden Eastman Europe thinks they're going to do a lot more, right? So we have this kind of weird thing where we have to make sure the numbers all make sure and flow through. In the past, we've done that like, okay, each company makes their proposal of what they think they're going to make, and then we have to back into what the other numbers are for the distribution companies. And then all of a sudden, maybe something changed, and maybe we came up with maybe a new instrument got approved and introduced in time to hit next year's sales goal, but then someone forgot to tell the other companies, and then that turned into February next year, me and the CFO having to kind of, why aren't we matching up? Why aren't all the sales goals matching up to what they need to be for each other? That's where we're using Fabric. So our modern...
And is it, quick time check, by the way, are you able to go another 10, 15? We're at the top of the hour.
Yeah, I'm good.
You're good. Is it basically just come down to dragging a spreadsheet into it?
No.
Or is it more than that?
Essentially, that's what they're building out from it. It's a lot of GIs spilling into it. So,
and how do you feed the GI end? Like, is it hitting the OData, or is it hitting you go to spreadsheet and then drag the spreadsheet in?
No, it's automated.
It is automated. Okay,
it is
so
automated.
It's like a nightly analysis or weekly analysis?
No, I feel there might be. I think there's a bot agent in the cloud, in a cloud computer that has access.
It's probably pulling the data though over OData or the API.
No, for sure. Yeah. But it's not doing it through Velixo. It's doing it through OData and then throwing it into the Fabric. Then we've been able to create Velixo's
so you did license Fabric. You licensed Microsoft Fabric. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So we're using that. And now going back to your Power BI training, which is awesome, but one of the barriers that we're hitting is a lot of our data will make that time out. The Power BI reporting.
Right. You need the differential refresh for your
side. Now we need a data lake. Oh, wait a second. Now we're in Fabric. So now there's the data lake. So now,
so you are doing all that. That's what I was wondering. That's fascinating.
Yeah. So this is the first project that we're doing, because we're coming up to forecasting time. So that, if a number changes on this company, how does that flow through the other company's forecast? So that's what we're getting interconnected with each other. And then that's where we're like, all right, now that we have this set up, and now that the CFO said okay because it's for him, now I'm going to use it for my operational and sales reporting.
That's really cool. So I'm curious, who'd you bring in for that? Are you doing it all in house, or did you bring in like a Power BI Fabric consultant company?
No, we don't have in-house IT. We have a managed IT service company, local. Their name is Modern IT, and they've been our IT support for quite a while now, probably about 15 years, maybe longer. And their CEO, he's very forward thinking on things like that. So him and I talk a lot, and he's already been on the front edge of trying to figure out AI, and he's trying to figure out how to keep himself relevant, his business relevant, right? Because in theory, AI could kind of replace a lot of that type of services too. So, and he has his resources that he pulls in, his AI experts versus his data experts, and they set it all up for us.
That's cool. So you are using Fabric, and where I was going with that was I was wondering if you heard of these. I just learned of these recently. So this is all changing by the week, this stuff, right? I mean, we're just kind of surfing the wave. But I heard there's this thing called Fabric IQ, which is about searching structured data, like ERP data. But then there's also this thing called Foundry IQ, which is about searching documents, institutional knowledge, PDFs, wikis, things like that. Have you those are both Microsoft technologies. I just read a blog post on it. I'll put a link to it, like kind of Foundry IQ versus Fabric IQ, but it comes down to the tooling. And this is where, back to the point, I think Microsoft's in a good position on this, because it's not just the LLMs that understand language. You then need them to be able to go find stuff. And that's where I think Microsoft's in a really cool position. It sounds like you guys are right on the wave of that. That's cool.
Yeah, because like if we were a Google Docs company, right? Like it's like, okay, how do you get access to Google Docs and your Gmail and all that? But then you have where you're storing your files and where are you communicating? You know, if you're using Slack or something like that. You know, for what it's worth, Microsoft's products usually are a little janky at the beginning, and then they make them good, right? Teams wasn't amazing. Everyone wanted to use Zoom. Now Teams is pretty good, you know, more than good enough. So now with Teams, you have Slack and Zoom in one. So that I think that's what helps us too, is because, like you said, the tooling, we are kind of all in with Microsoft as far as our background security and file storage and intercompany communications. Well, now we have access to all that, and AI can have access all to that. And then Acumatica, at least the way they've designed it and had the OData feed, it's clean enough to us to be able to pull that information out however we need to and have it communicate with. So that's a really cool concept of like your live Acumatica data, and how does that relate to like some email about a product launch? Like maybe we can get there, where cool it can do that type of information.
That's really interesting. Yeah, and the approach you're taking is the approach that's my gut feel on, where, I don't know, maybe not everyone goes this way, but your size company for sure makes sense to go this way, in the sense that who cares what Acumatica is doing on the AI side, the AI assistant, the AI studio, maybe the AI studio, because you could build it into workflows. I don't know if you're doing anything there, but the AI assistant, it's like, no, I'd rather just bring all of my data down, including the stuff that's outside of Acumatica, and analyze it in Copilot or something outside of Acumatica, because I need my emails, I need all that stuff. So
yeah, I like even with like Velixo just launched their NX Velixo Intelligence. Like that's cool. We could do a query builder in that. You know, part of this is also having time to try all the new stuff, because something new keeps coming out every week. Like you said, it's like, I'm still trying to answer emails that, you know, I'm still trying to make sure we can forecast, and for one company, like there's so many tools coming out. It's like, let's finish one project, right? That's the other hard part to manage. Just like, everybody chill. We got to get one thing done first. Then let's learn from that experience. That's the hardest part, I think, right now, because there's all these things that send mind spiraling, especially if you have a creative mind on this type of stuff. So you got to, no, I'm finishing a project. But why the hell am I even saying this?
Back to the, like, in Acumatica versus outside of Acumatica.
Yeah, system. It's so hard for us because, you know, if I just ask the Acumatica, how's our sales doing today, I don't know how relevant that information is going to be, because again, it depends on which company we're talking about and who we're selling to. If we're selling to ourselves, does that Acumatica understand that? Like, is it going to get to the point to be able to analyze those type of things? Hopefully that'll be awesome. That'll be amazing. But this is where you still need that human person to be able to define to even our AI what this stuff means. Now it definitely gets better. Our Copilot gets better within one person, you know, continuing to develop the prompts. It's starting to learn, oh, Bakun is part of your company, because it's starting. I don't know how it's understanding that, but compared to now versus when I first started playing with this a year ago, it's understanding the interconnectivity of our business better. But is it still going to get to the point to where, yeah, and it really is. I mean, so we have a lot of reports. If you want, I could show you this one report real quick.
If you're okay on time, I'll keep going. Yeah, I would love to.
Yeah.
You're okay? Okay. Let me put it up here. I'll add it, and then I'll put us down here just so you.
Yeah, and I'll say why. Like, so we have these reports that.
Let me get this off. There we go.
Okay. So we have.
You able to zoom in at all?
Yeah, we have Velixo reports that are scheduled
maybe a little,
to go
even
out.
further. Keep going in. Keep going in. You can just drag around a little more. All right, that's good. Perfect. Thank you.
We have Velixo reports that are scheduled to go out at the beginning of each month. I get a lot now. There's like, it's about 15, and they do these summaries based off of our divisions of product, our companies, and things like that. And because of where the data lives in Acumatica, we're able to put a lot of this, just have it come through Velixo. But we have a lot of, like, the whole idea of these brands of product or locations, because this is sales territory by territory. So these are our different areas that we're defining as a territory, or by brand. Like, you know, maybe Europe's doing great, but Eastman Brass isn't doing great, right? So it gives us different ways to look at the product. Is it which company's selling well? What products are selling well? Where are we looking at year-over-year comparisons and all this information that we put, from the data that comes out, and then we can even break it down by.
Yeah, so the totals are the same, but you're slicing and dicing it by different categories.
Exactly. And these categories are defined by attributes in the system. So the brand.
On the stock items.
Yeah, exactly. So the brand is because, don't do that. The brand is because we have a Eastman Brass brand assigned to all of the products that are Eastman Brass. We have a Lasky brand that are assigned to it. So it's even more, item classes get you very far. And that is the ultimate overall structure that we use. And in my mind, as a musician, it's basically the score order. Like if you would see it on a score, it's got a brand, it's got a item class and a subclass. But that needs to group together for Eastman Brass, because for us, that's tubas and French horns and trumpets and trombones, and we could start to see how that's doing. Then we could see how Shires is selling the brands that it sells, how Bakkun's selling its brands within the brass world, because they're a clarinet company, but they make our brass wind mouthpieces. And then we can see how Europe's doing, how Australia's doing, Wilson's doing, China external. Then we could go by brand summary by territory. So we have a lot of these reports come out, and you can see it's just different ways of showing where we're at. And then the product managers get this information and they analyze it.
I like how you color coded it also, by the way. That helps my brain associate, know what's associated with each other. Nice job.
Yeah. So, we go all the way through it. And the reason I'm showing this, because we're talking about the AI side of things. Well, one, it shows the power of Acumatica's attributes and how you can use it to define this type of stuff. And this is how we've even gotten to the point to where we're defining product, whether or not it is manufactured or distributed by a company, because we have rules in the GIs that say if Shires sells it, if the manufacturing company is Shires and the selling company is Shires, it's manufactured. Everything else is distributed.
Gotcha.
So we have rules built into the GIs to define this type of stuff that isn't really definable by anything that I think any general ERP system would have thought or developed for you to do. But because the generic inquiry tools are pretty powerful to be able to write that type of information, we're able to think okay, I know as a human being, I would know that that's a manufactured trumpet. How can I tell the system that that's a manufactured trumpet versus something they're having distributed for them? So that's how we get to all this information.
It sounds like you're not using regular Acumatica MRP or something like that. You're basically you got your own thing that you're doing through just the data itself, right?
No, that we're doing the GI. That is a expression in the GI itself.
But then, are you using Acumatica's MRP module or replenishment module?
Oh yeah, we are. No, we are.
Oh, you are still okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's
we're able to still use it. This is more for sales reporting.
So it's more for forecasting specifically.
And forecasting, and also looking, how are we at our year-to-date goals? Setting our year-to-date.
So the stuff you were just showing.
Forecasting our goals and reporting against how we're doing towards our goals.
Okay. That's really cool. And the Velixa one, it comes to you automatically, like via email. How do you even schedule that? I didn't know you could schedule a Velixa report to run unattended.
Yeah, well, we have to do it on a cloud server. A cloud.
That's computer. What I thought. It's like a via virtual machine somewhere, and it's okay. But it works.
And it's set up through the Microsoft Task Scheduler.
Yep. Gotcha. And it comes in via, people like it in Excel, or they like it in a PDF, or how do they get it?
We do it in Excel, because what I was going to say is that one I was showing you, we have a bunch of different ones, right?
Here, I'll put it back.
Well, we have a bunch of these. So rather than me going through them, because I'm not in charge of sales, but I kind of want to look at things. We also have inventory reports that come out with overstock and dead stock. We also have other reports like this that include a company's inventory. I'll just dump those 15 reports into Copilot and say, act as a vice president of operations for an international meeting. I have a prompt saved. Tell me the 5 things I need to look at right now.
That's so cool. So in that case, you're using Excel as the mechanism to communicate the data to the LLM.
Yeah.
Interesting. So that at some point you might just have that weekly email include that as a summary. It might just run on it automatically.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just, I'm sure we can create ways to have it. All right. Every on the 2nd of every month, analyze these reports that come out and give me the same information every month. I don't even have to think about it. I just schedule it.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah,
that's really
so that's how I think AI is usable today right now. I'm excited about the things that Acumatica is trying to do. I'm excited about the things that Velixo is trying to do. We are currently using it, doing what I'm telling you right now. Get a bunch of data, analyze it, and tell me what I should worry about. Tell me what the product managers should worry about. Tell me what, I don't, whoever, right? And then it does a good job of getting to those 5 things. Because in my mind, I'm going to read through all 10, 15 of these reports and remember this stuff. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, right. That's super cool. Well, I want to respect your time mainly because then when I ask you to come on a podcast episode again in the future, you know that Tim doesn't just monopolize your whole day.
I appreciate that.
Any other closing thoughts before we wrap it up?
No. I mean, I get I kind of did right there with the whole, because the buzz thing is AI, and I think you can use AI today right now and get value out of Copilot right now by doing what I just showed you. And even if you're not a very complicated company, download your inventory. You could just go into Acumatica, download your inventory balance, download your open orders by customer, download your sales history, throw it into AI, say, what should I do? It'll give you some good ideas. And I think that's right now where we're finding the value. Massive amount of information, analyze it for me, rather than the normal way of just like doing all this math and only look at the things that are over 20% or whatever limit you give to where you care about stuff. Have it do that analysis, because it's going to pull out things that you're not going to see. Because I think as humans, we can't look at thousands of rows of data and I need to look at that number. It just doesn't happen.
That's your point earlier that I'm totally sold on. This is stuff that you never had time to do. Like theoretically you did, like you might say you do it in a meeting, but the reality is you don't actually do it. And whether it's 100% correct or not, who cares? You're still going to look at it and vet it and decide yourself. But it's better than doing this, right? You can still do this, but at least you have a little more information to go off of. So I love that use case.
Or there's even been times where I'm hearing people say stuff and I'm like, oh wait, that triggered something that the AI told me. It has happened, and that becomes a little, maybe 2 fingers now, because I'm a little more attuned to things that are just sitting in the back of my head because Copilot told me stuff, and I'm like, oh wait a second, I make those connections a little bit faster. It has happened a couple times now.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Are you going to be at the Acumatica user groups in Southern California, Irvine?
Tuesday, I was planning on it, but I think I got to go visit one of our factories. We have not be able to make it. All right. Yeah, I'm probably going to be on a business trip that week.
I had something I want to ask you about that, but I'm going to ask it offline.
Okay.
Other than that, I think we can wrap it up. Any closing, final thoughts?
Have fun.
I like that. Good advice, especially with the AI stuff, right?
Yeah.
Have fun with it.
Yeah, have fun with it. Schedule yourself time to do it. Make yourself do it.
Love it. Yeah, block out the time and don't be interrupted. Otherwise, it's never a priority, right?
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
All right. There'll be a 30-second outro. Would you mind sticking on? I had 2 things I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
All right, cool. Thanks for coming on, Rob.
Thank you.